This is the All Rev'd Up podcast, and this is season 5, episode 7, and I am grateful. I'm Reverend Emmett Price.
And I'm Reverend Irene Monroe.
Irene, before we talk about gratitude and what we are grateful for, and perhaps who we are grateful to, let us thank each of our listeners and viewers. Thank you for listening to us on the various podcast apps and for watching the actual live recording of the podcast on our YouTube channel. We are grateful for your support, your encouragement, your feedback, your reviews, and your comments. Thank you so much for sharing the podcast with others.
Indeed, and a tsunami of gratitude, not only to our audience, but to our talent producers, Cavante Smalls and Kyla Wright.
Here. Well, we're talking about gratitude today. Let's take a peek at this quick clip.
One of the highlights of my mom's visit is her soul-licious spread. Fried pork chops, biscuits, thick-ass gravy. I was a pig in mud. Eating another pig.
Gee.
Thanksgiving is always an interesting holiday. Although I'm not fond of the various manifestations of Pilgrim, Puritan, or Pocahontas narratives, I am truly fond of taking a moment at the beginning of winter to not only reflect, but articulate and express gratitude. I am grateful for so much and to so many people that I can be here all day and night expressing each one of these numerous blessings. But for now, Irene, what does Thanksgiving mean to you, and what kind of gravy are you having?
Let's start with the gravy first, okay? So, no skin.
Okay.
Some mushrooms.
Okay.
Some onions.
Okay.
All right? And it has to smoothly, okay? Not chunky, but
okay, no chunks.
Smoothly, okay? Grace my my turkey slices here and stuff. But you know what it means to me, it's so interesting here, and I was so glad that you open up to talk about, you can't get with the pilgrims and all of that kind of decoration that goes with it. But I must say that I did grow up feeling quite thankful for the Macy's Day Parade. I did grow up with it. That is a holiday, and it took me a while when I moved up here to Cambridge, Massachusetts, to not be at the parade. So I do like my floats and stuff. But, when it comes to Thanksgiving, it's this. We didn't land on Plymouth Rock, as Malcolm said. Plymouth Rock landed on us. So we had to make a way out of no way of what do we do with this while recognizing the subjugation and genocide of a people. So how do we make this work, this holiday work? Because, and I didn't realize really, Emmett, and you may have experienced it too. When I first got up here, Thanksgiving Day, I didn't realize how important it was. So important that everything is shut down. Yeah. I was absolutely amazed because, see, in New York City, we got the parade, you go to Central Park, you hang out, because it's a melting pot of folks. And so I was really surprised to see how Thanksgiving, factors here. And what is interesting to me, that in the face of now having more information, I'm surprised how central it still is, the narrative, as well as the celebration of it. But to be honest with you, it does give me a time to reflect. I like it because I need to say this. All my foods come out, Emmett, okay? The pecan pie, okay? Sweet potato pie. What do you have, pecan or sweet potato? Or
we
both?
do sweet potato.
Oh, see, you're not authentic.
We got nut allergies in the house.
But it does allow me to pause. It really does. And be thankful for what is before me and what I can hope for. And to connect with people that I can't normally connect with because of the hurriedness and harriedness of my particular life. So I give thanks for that. As a matter of fact, when I was pastoring a church, I used to have Thanksgiving Eve service. Again, it was the whole idea, recognizing what this day means for our Native Americans, but at the same time, recognizing it, hoping for change, not only for us, but for them, but giving thanks to the people in our lives, and just a forward movement, not only in terms of civil rights issues, but for the world as a whole.
Yeah, Thanksgiving is always an important place, and it's a tense place because there is a tension. There is a tension of remembering those who are no longer with us, who in our memories of Thanksgiving past had dominant roles,
Hmm.
whether seats at the table or
Yeah.
conversations we had, or there was the adults table and the kids table,
And the
you know, that
testifying that goes on.
all of that,
Okay. And the drunk
there's
uncle.
well, we all got that one too,
Okay. And the
and
football.
well, and I was about to say, in this room, there's football games going on. In this room, there's whatever the kids get to watch,
That's
video
right.
games or whatnot.
Bid whist in my group.
Okay, we have spades on our side of the house, but that whole notion of remembering,
Yeah.
which I think the gift of reflection helps us to also be grateful that we were able to be in the world at the same time as those loved ones who have gone on before us. And then when you think about the fact that you have a generation coming behind us, in some instances too, who we can help create new memories for them and with them. So it's a tense
Yeah.
moment, right? Because there are
Yeah.
things that we are working through in real time, but there are also things that we're so excited about, and
And
just
traditions that are set. Like,
yes.
like you sitting at the children's table, Emmett,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and
Not,
and you
not anymore now. Not anymore. I've been emancipated, sister.
okay, all right. But sitting at the children's table,
Hmm.
and then graduating from that, and
Yes.
being with the grown folks here
Yeah.
and
The rites
stuff.
of passage, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely here. And it becomes for many in terms of Black culture a homecoming in a very
Yes.
different way. And certainly we celebrate Juneteenth.
Yeah.
Not so much. I don't know about you folks, but not so much July 4th. No, no, not too much
Yeah.
that. But it's
Yeah.
a kind of homecoming that gets us ready, particularly in this part of the country, because the seasons change, you get cold. We hunker down for months before we get back together for Juneteenth
Yeah.
and see family. So it's really kind of like two times of the year, Juneteenth and
Hmm.
Thanksgiving, and I love the menus for both times.
It's always good food, good eats, as we say, right? And you're right about that July 4th. That's a day we just ain't got to go to work. I mean, that's
Mhm.
that's that's the highlight of July 4th. No work on that day, right? But in terms of Thanksgiving and certainly Juneteenth, these are aggregation days. These are
Yeah,
days where the
markers.
matriarchs and patriarchs of the family can summon all the children who have gone. Thanksgiving and Juneteenth is when prodigal sons and prodigal daughters and
That's right.
prodigal siblings and prodigal
Mhm,
kin, are
mhm.
welcomed back into the fold and get to eat before they are questioned in terms of where you been and what you've been up. At least
Oh,
you let them
oh,
eat first.
or or the tent stuff when you bring your lover home. Okay,
Oh.
and it's a woman instead of a guy. Okay.
Oh.
And the people are highly religious because you
Woo.
always got, now Emmett, work with me. We always got that person, it's usually
Yeah.
a male,
Hmm.
that's gonna bless the table.
Hmm.
The turkey done got cold. The
Hmm.
skin done reformed on the gravy.
Hmm.
Okay. The mashed potatoes, I mean, they have wilted. I mean, that just goes on and on. Just when you think they're gonna stop, then you done
Yeah.
grab the biscuit.
Yeah.
Okay. While everyone, all heads are bowed. Then they go, and yes, Lord, and you go, oh Jesus.
well,
Those
well, you
traditions you miss.
the flip side of that is when there's a prayer by a religious and conservative family member,
Hmm.
when there is somebody in the family who done brought a partner home, and you're expecting for the prayer to be the long prayer, and that person can't spit it out, so everybody's concerned now because that prayer is not what it usually is, and everybody's worried.
or this, it goes like this. Everybody know he didn't brought home a woman. And they say, we thank God for everybody. We love everybody.
Everybody.
Everybody. We don't, and it's coded. And we just, and look, they want to say, Yeah, and we just love everybody. Okay.
Everybody.
That becomes a refrain, and then everybody at the table nod their head. We don't love it. We love everybody. Okay.
After this, when the kids go off into the kids' room and kind of recite what just happened, and now everybody takes on that, and the kids start talking about, well, we love everybody, kind of flip it and doing that. So there are tons of traditions.
Better yet, when you've moved from the table, okay,
Mm.
and now we're all in the living room, and one of the kids will say, such and such said, what? You a homosexual, and that's your homosexual. Now that has happened, and then you
Oh.
go, oh, okay, and I say something like, well, who did you hear that from? Oh, from Aunt Elsie, just earlier today, because children will call it out because they
it,
have
it,
no filters.
it's usually the ones between 3 and 6.
That's
I
right.
mean, those are the ones who tell all the tales and
Mm-hmm.
tell who told the tales as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Okay,
Oh
and
my
then
goodness.
Big Mama come out and say, now remember now what we said at the table. We love everybody, and then
Everybody.
everybody in the living room go, that's right, that's right.
Oh, you got me in stitches already. We look. It's time for a break. We're gonna take a break. This is the All Rev'd Up podcast, and we love
Everybody.
everybody. We'll be right back.
Colonization. I think it is important to give thanks and to have a day for that, but maybe the history of why we celebrated it in that certain way is more complicated.
This is the All Rev'd Up podcast. We're back, and you just heard an excerpt from a November 24th, 2015 montage of Indigenous voices responding to the question, what does Thanksgiving mean to you? By the digital media company Cut. Before our first segment, we played an excerpt of Blackish from their season 1 in 2014. Irene, you were about to go into the complicated history of Thanksgiving.
Well, let me expose my ignorance, like many of us in our school curriculum, right? So in grade school we would have these plays, and one of them would be a Thanksgiving
Mm-hmm.
play here, and um, and one year, believe it or not, I played a pilgrim. Hmm.
Oh, Lord, I can only
Yes.
imagine how this went.
I played a pilgrim. Okay, and again, ignorance. It's not so much bliss because it hurts people. Because one of my so I'm living in Brooklyn, New York, and there was I had a Native American friend, and he said, "Do you really know what Thanksgiving is?" And that's how you learn,
Mm-hmm.
because it wasn't in the curriculum here and stuff. And one of the things we got to understand about the Pilgrims, even though they came here for the whole idea of religious liberty, we hear that a lot today. Religious liberty at the expense of subjugating and hurting and denigrating and dehumanizing another group of people. That while the Pilgrims had come here in 1620, and 1621 was the first, um, Thanksgiving, but it's also the symbol of the persecution of Native Americans and a long history of bloodshed with European settlers here. Now, what's very interesting, you would think, you fast forward and we get to 1990, and then we got President Bush, Baby Bush. Okay, that one. I could say in a polite way, ironically, but I will say in my usual way, ignorantly, he designated November as National American Indian Heritage Month to
Mm-hmm.
celebrate the history, arts, and tradition of Native American people. Work with me, Emmett. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the kind of ignorance here, and I think when I think about this in a serious way, when you erase history, you erase the people, you erase
Yes.
their voice. And so it would be, and so I had to think about this as I got older. I certainly did one Thanksgiving about 20 years ago when I first came back up here. Thea and I, we went out to Plymouth Rock here, and it is a very day. It's a solemn day. It's a sad day. It's so much so. As we were driving back from Plymouth, we say, now how do we really sit down at a table here? and give and do Thanksgiving the way we have done Thanksgiving here. But when you subjugate a people, and you make them invisible, and then you make a national holiday, everybody's celebrating this moment, which further adds injury, to an oppressed group like Native Americans. But I kind of, it'd be like this, like, the white Confederate every year, just let's pick a year, celebrate slavery. Okay, and we have no voice. We laugh, but you know what? I know we laugh, but I see that similar, analogous to that. It's like we're still oppressed. Thinking, singing Dixie. Come on now, doing blackface. It's troubling. So it's important to remember. It's important to excavate the history and to tell the truth, even in the midst of trying to keep a tradition going. And the question then, in the face of what we know, how does that tradition looks different moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that you invoke in this moment is, what do we do with problematic historical moments that are enshrined within our national
DNA.
DNA. Thanksgiving is a part of this nation and part of the celebration of gratitude in the midst of so much suffering. The trail of tears and all the bloodshed that you have recognized, and then also the continuous subjugation on reservations and
and the
contemporary
the
contemporary
native town.
concentration camps, and
Right.
and all these different moments that we know existed that have been hidden, kept quiet, particularly in our curriculum. You're absolutely right.
And things, Emmett, that we just take for granted, like
Yeah.
tattooing. Tattooing is it's very interesting. That's a Native American art form,
Yeah.
but we use it as decoration. We meaning present day as
Yeah.
decoration.
Back in California, when you went to the casino was on Indian reservation, right? It was sovereign land that were allowed to have those kind of casinos. So yeah, there's so many different things that we take for granted, and I
But
hope
how do
that
you
part
rate
of
this though, Emmett?
well,
Because the question I say is, can we give back the land? See, can we give back the land? I'll give you a classic example. I had to give a talk in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. So while I was there, I figured I'd go to Yellowstone Park, take advantage of that. So I do the tour, get on the bus, and so the tour guide says here, "Welcome to Yellowstone Park," and they say what land it is, and they name some of the tribes here, and they said, "Oh yeah," and I said, "Well, are any of them around in the area?" And so she said, "No, we removed all 27 of them."
oh my God.
But said this, and everybody in the bus didn't flinch an eye, and said, "But they could come here free. They can enter the park free. Work with me." So then I go into one of the gift shops, which are many on the site there, and you got all this Native American paraphernalia. And so I figured, okay, maybe this is how white guilt will make amends. So I assumed that the money that they're making from the gift shops is going to maybe a school, Native American school in Wyoming or whatever. No, not at all. Not at all. The money is used to maintain and keep the park itself.
Yeah, I don't even know how we tell that kind of history with a straight face and with integrity. I mean, I just don't. I do think, to your question, that yes, we can do right by the folks who had stewarded this land. We can do much more than these land acknowledgments that people get up in woke institutions
Right.
before they have
Right.
events.
That we're standing on
Yeah,
blah, 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 blah. Yeah,
yeah.
land.
No,
Wampanoag land.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think we do need to give some of the land back to descendants. I think we do need to make certain lands available for the use for certain families and whatnot. I think we can do that. There's a
And
ton
tell
of
the
land.
truth about the relationship between Black slaves and Native
Well,
Americans.
well, come on now. I
Okay.
mean,
And that has to be told.
yeah,
And that alliance needs to be strengthened,
yeah.
as we push for reparations, because I think giving back the land is a form of reparations.
Well, I think it absolutely is, and I think we need to get away from some of the myths that we tell in terms of who has it worse and kind of the crab in the barrel type of mentality. The indigenous were here before before the ships got here, right? I
Okay.
mean, so
Before Columbus discovered.
before he fell, well, how do you call it? Falling forward, right?
Okay.
You flail forward to get
Navigationally challenged. Navigationally challenged. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so I do agree with you that we need to build stronger collaborative coalitions to support and honor
Yeah.
our indigenous folks
And we
who were
need
here
to, need
before
to
us.
know more about the culture other
Right.
than what you said, Pocahontas and corn.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah,
That some
corn.
will say
Yeah.
maize, you know. We
Yeah.
need to know more about
Yeah.
that and
Yeah.
stuff. And nothing troubles me more. I'll always remember this. I had got a Ford Fellow for my doctorate, and I remember going to DC and meeting a number of Native Americans who got it too. And I said, and talking with them, I said, you know what? Now I see how vapid and how empty my education is, because oh my God, the stories they tell, and you
Yeah.
know, it's far much deeper than any textbook, even today, is disclosing.
Some of the most brilliant people, some of the most
Yeah.
resilient people, some of the most forgiving people, some of the most just tremendously I don't even have the words to
Spiritual.
say it.
They're very spiritual people.
Definitely
And,
spiritual.
and what
Yeah.
bothers me, it took a football team, okay,
Oh my
the
goodness! Don't even
the
go. Don't even go there. Don't
to,
even go.
to,
I'm
to
gonna stop
finally
you. No, no,
understand
no.
not
I'm
to
I'll
use
go.
Redskins, right?
I'll go stop you there because I do not do NFL. We're not talking about NFL on this podcast. But what we will talk about is a final word, a final blessing,
Yeah.
which you will utter for us
Yeah,
today.
yeah. You know, thanks. Thanksgiving is always a time for me to stop and reflect. I always start with gratitude and end with remembering. I've come to understand gratitude as not only a state of mind, but also as an emotion, a feeling, and a trait. For me, it is a conscious practice of thankfulness that implies much more than showing good manners. It is of my opinion that gratitude helps us to acknowledge the goodness in our lives even when things are feeling a little off. It switches our attention from toxic emotions and help us connect with what's good in life. Having a sense of gratitude increases our capacity for forgiveness. It develops compassion. It helps to motivate us to help one another. And for me, having a sense of gratitude helps me to accept and admire the many aspects that make life worth living. And it gives me a conscious role in choosing what they are. But gratitude also helps me to recognize that some of the sources of goodness lies outside of the self. It helps to identify the beauty in life, like the change of the seasons, the birth of a newborn, and a good piece of pecan pie. As I stated in the beginning, Thanksgiving is always a time for me to stop and reflect. I always start with gratitude and I end with remembering. And in the spirit of remembering, gratitude for me is a powerful catalyst to help me recognize my connection. And the highest appreciation of gratitude is preserving the safety of one another. It is not merely in the words we utter, but also in the daily acts we do. My act this holiday at the dinner table reminds me in my prayer of thanksgiving to remember and to speak out. And in that note, I'm reminded that for many Native Americans, Thanksgiving is not a cause of separation, but rather a national day of mourning. Since 1970, Native Americans have gathered at noon on Coles Hill in Plymouth, Massachusetts, to commemorate the atrocity. And as we get into the holiday spirit, let us remember the whole story of this holiday. And in so doing, it helps us to remember and respect the ongoing struggle our Native American brothers and sisters face every day, and particularly on Thanksgiving. Ashe,
Ashe.
and amen.
Amen. All Rev'd Up is brought to you by us, the Revs. Our amazing producers are Kyla Wright and Cavante Smalls.
Music for this episode is from Reverend Price's son and musical prodigy, Emmett G. Price IV. All Rev'd Up is distributed by GBH.
Additional thanks to Bob Kempf, Elizabeth O'Brien, May He, Devin Robbins, Meredith Neerman, and Zach Waldman.
If you like what you hear, let us know. Give us a review on Apple Podcasts and follow us at All Rev'd Up Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube.
Feel free to send us a note, a question, or a comment to allrevduppod@gmail.com. We'll be back